I suppose that the fact that these young women in these beautiful uniforms were being placed into field hospitals and nursing young men, because you had to be at least relatively young, you know, to be fighting in that war. And there's always a possibility or even a likelihood that they might feel romantic towards each other. But I think what happened was that the professional nurses were so aware of the risk of nurses getting entangled, emotionally entangled with their patients. Sometimes they still did, and they knew that they could be sacked and sent home if they became over-involved with a patient. So those emotions were kind of kept very much in the background. I think they controlled those emotions, even though they may often at times have felt them. And at the same time, I think maybe romance blossomed quite often, but I think nurses were more likely to feel sisterly or motherly towards their patients, because those patients were just so vulnerable when they were coming back from the front with serious injuries. I think what was aroused in the nurses was compassion, and I think it made you a better nurse. I think it was better for the patients, and they believed that at the time, if you could portray yourself as a family member, if you could have that presence with the patient as somebody who was like a mother or like a sister. And the patients responded to the nurses in that way as well. So there are stories of patients saying, "Oh, you're so like my sister." But underneath all of that, I think there was an undercurrent of romance often. And a lot of patients corresponded with a lot of nurses when they went back to the front, especially the nurses in the French military hospitals. It seems to have happened more there than in the British hospitals, that patients got better, went back to the front lines, and from the trenches wrote letters, lots of letters back to their nurses, and nurses replied to those letters. So they remained friends. So there were a whole range of different ways that nurses and patients could be with each other, but never the Catherine Barclay, Ernest Hemingway type of nurse where she's actually climbing into bed with the patient. That would never have happened in any scenario. And those, there were rules about how that couldn't happen.